Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai. Well, last night, the bill to lower the number of people needed in Alberta for a referendum was passed. We're going to deal with a little bit of Preston Manning and a conversation he had with Candace. We're also going to go right to the APP and a little meeting that they had a couple days ago where they actually released the question. And a few other things, including Mrs. Psycho Jann Arden, who, now, if you're not on X, you probably haven't heard. But when I got on, she was one of the very first people where it became a rite of passage if you got kicked off or blocked from her page. So out of curiosity, because personally, Jann Arden, I used to like her music, but I mean, whatever. I thought, how bad can she really be? So I checked her out. She's toxic. She's ignorant. She is a complete spreader of misinformation. Everything that you could find disgustful or disgusting in a person, she emits like an aroma of standing in the middle of a fecal field. Horrible person. So the first few times I would reply to little things that she said where she was just posting either very, very hateful, just hateful stuff. I kind of posted how kind of un-Canadian. And I had no problems, and I thought, well, this is great. Until finally I posted something on hers, and it's not like I did this all the time, but once I had started following her, you do see her. And finally I got really tired of a lot of them, like especially the fake news. So I corrected her on some fake news. Holy cow, that was it. That was the end of it. I don't get a reply, I just get a simple, yep. And a couple of her minions jump on, spewing more absolute lies, like just absolute lies, and hateful. And the best part is they don't know my heritage. So they proved they are racist, like very, which isn't surprising because this is what the new Liberal Party is like. The new Liberals, this is who they are. They don't think, they just yell out whatever it takes to try and insult or make everybody around go, oh, well, that person must be bad because he's, and they don't care that what your religion is or your ethnicity is, or they don't care. They don't listen to reality, and they do not know how to research, and they do not actually use any part of their moral compass. I don't know if they just don't have it, or maybe the school beat it out of them. I'm not sure. But anyways, we're going to deal with her little embarrassing spew today. She tries to put her 2 cents in on the Western separatist agenda. Just once more proving she's toxic. So for all you out there, I've already got rid of the CDs. I'm actually going to try and make a solar panel with hers. Although, after seeing this, her solar panels may not produce any energy because she's got nothing up here. So I don't have faith in the disc, but we'll see. Now, moving on. Let's get started with the actual announcement that came out this morning.
Well, the spring session of the Alberta legislature ended late last night, the UCP pushing through a flurry of bills, including one making it easier to launch a referendum on Alberta separation. Bill 54 included an 11th hour amendment that would declare no separation referendum could threaten First Nations existing treaty rights. This bill has faced backlash from Indigenous leaders since its introduction into the House more than 2 weeks ago. The NDP says the changes do nothing to address those concerns.
Alberta's government has heard concerns from First Nations regarding how a referendum question may impact existing treaties between First Nations and the Crown. We are listening, and we recognize the importance of protecting treaty rights, which is why we're proposing this amendment.
Acknowledging the treaties does not mean much when you are threatening its very existence. Well, Mr. Chair, this amendment does not give any assurance to me nor the Chiefs.
The bill also includes changes disallowing electronic tabulators and removes the ability to vouch for someone else without ID at a polling station. It also includes new rules allowing corporations and unions to fund political parties, candidates, and third-party advertising. The bill passed third reading but is yet to receive royal assent. Well, the spring session...
Yeah. Well, now about that. There's real ignorance when it comes to a lot of these chiefs. They are, how do I say, out of touch. Not only do they not understand what's on their treaties, they've lost their way, which I have said in previous episodes. In the meantime, this is happening in BC.
36 BC First Nations has signed a deal to buy a minority stake in Enbridge's West Coast natural gas pipeline system. That news breaking this morning, just as we stepped into the office after 4 a.m. Now, the head of the Stonlesec Indigenous Alliance Limited Partnership is calling the deal a significant milestone for the First Nations. It will bring several economic benefits. The CBC's Yasmin Renea has been going through this documentation since she walked in the door this morning, and she's here to tell us more about it. Hello.
Good morning.
Thanks for doing this. We walked into this morning, and I thought, oh, well, this is an awfully big deal. What are some of the details here?
It is a big deal. They're calling it significant, groundbreaking. So the Stonlesec Indigenous Alliance Limited Partnership says it will invest about $715 million through a whole-owned subsidiary for a 12.5% stake in the pipeline system. And that system extends more than 2,900 kilometers from Fort Nelson in northeast BC and from Gordondale near the BC-Alberta border down south to the Canada-US border. Stonlesec says it will secure a $400 million loan guarantee from the Canada Indigenous Loan Guarantee Corporation, which is a subsidiary of a federal Crown Corp, to enable the deal. That loan program was announced by the federal government last year, and the First Nations Partnership says on closing, this equity investment will be the first major investment to receive a loan guarantee under that program.
All right.
And by the way, that whole program was set up as a blackmail, we'll call it. It was a brainwash, another hook. Oh, look what the government's doing for you with other people's tax money in order to create inequality, but yet keep the foot on the Indigenous people, where they think, oh, well, the federal government loves us now. No, they don't. They don't care. Now, by the way, there are other pipelines where these oil companies have been trying to get the Indigenous to be involved into it. Their biggest battle is the federal government and the provincials' NDP. Now, could you imagine if the federal government was cut off from Alberta and there was a free market? Could you imagine the profits that could be made by the Indigenous people? Could you imagine perfect water, clean lakes and rivers, firefighting equipment, homes, roads, schools, universities, and no federal strings attached? Oh my God. Someone's got to wake these loudmouth chiefs up and get them back to their roots, because I think they'll find equality was always the goal. What they think they have, like I said, they haven't read the treaties. They have no idea. Previous episodes, I even post links to the treaties on there. Yeah, these people have no idea. Now, on to Preston Manning. He had a great interview with Candace on Juno News. Listen carefully. He's not a separatist. Not to say that he doesn't understand the separatists, but he's a lot like Daniel Smith. He would much rather see a better union within Canada, but he understands the idea and what's pushing the West away from Canada.
Just wanted to highlight a few more pieces from your op-ed and just get you to reply. I mean, first of all, that line there that no matter who leads the Liberal Party, a large number of Westerners will simply not stand for another 4 years. You also write to voters, particularly in Central Atlantic Canada, need to recognize that a vote for the Carney Liberals is a vote for Western secession, a vote to break up Canada as we know it. And then you finish the piece by saying the next Prime Minister of Canada, if it remains Mark Carney, would be identified in the history books, tragically and needlessly, as the last Prime Minister of a united Canada. And so I'm just wondering if you could elaborate on that. Do you really think that Western Canada is at the point where it won't last another 4 years, it won't stand for it, and that is perhaps how Mark Carney will go down?
I think it's the combination. The Quebec secession sentiment is there as well. It looks like the Parti Québécois is destined to form the next government in Quebec. The first plank in their platform is to hold another referendum on the secession issue. So you're going to have that continued problem, probably increased on the Eastern Front, and then you combine that with this unrest in Western Canada, dissatisfaction with the way the Federation is working. Those are two forces that, if they start operating at the same time, have the potential to blow the country apart. And what's most worrisome in Western Canada is the utter indifference of the Central Canadian elites and media to this phenomena. And even the misreporting on it, they keep thinking it's just an Alberta phenomenon. The polling shows it's broader than Alberta. They also think that the only thing that's being talked about is secessions, the separation. That's not the only thing that's been talked about. The other thing that's being talked about is how could the Federation, the federal government, react in such a way as to diminish that unrest. That's just as much on the table. It's been advocated by Premier Smith and Premier Moe of Saskatchewan. So there's other options besides separation, but it's not all Alberta. There's other options other than secession, but Central Canada and elites better pay attention to it. It's got the potential to wreck the Federation.
Well, you say that Central
and he
elites...
says that very well. I urge you to watch this entire video. As always, I post all the links in the description. We're just going to scroll ahead a little wee bit here.
What do you make of Premier Smith's actions and sort of what she's laying out on the table here?
Well, I think it's a responsible approach. I think it's supported by a large number of Albertans. And the approach she is basically taking, say that there's a list of conditions that have to be met by the federal government and the federal parliament for the West to remain content within the Federation, and she spells them out. Premier Moe's done the same thing, and I think her list is correct. It's very much based on this fundamental fact that apparently large numbers of Canadians don't get, that the biggest economic strength of this country is its natural resources. Canada is the largest country, second largest country in the world by land mass, which means you have the second largest or maybe the largest stock of natural resources: agriculture, energy, mining, forestry, and the fishery. And the fact that under the Trudeau administration, those sectors were treated as relics from the past and environmental liabilities, when those are the building blocks of the Canadian economy. And what she's doing is asserting there's certain things that have to be done to remove the obstructions to the development of those sectors by the federal government. And that's not just in Alberta's interest, that's in the national interest. And the ball is now in the federal government's court, and people are going to watch the throne speech. And not just the speech. There's been talk about all this for a long time. They're going to watch whether there's any action on the part of the federal government to address those things on her list. And in terms of the referendum, of course, Alberta, again, Western Canada, tends to favor more democratic mechanisms, referendum, citizens' initiatives, freer votes in the legislatures and the parliament, and this is quite in accordance with that tradition. And basically, the referendum gives people a chance who want a particular position to be adopted by the governments to have a referendum to see how much support there is for it.
Well, you mentioned earlier about having popular
so
support, and
he totally understands that, and they are correct. They absolutely correct. But you can tell by how the East always votes. You can see by their record, they're not near the lovers of democracy and free speech and free market as the West is. The West is built on that, and it's always been butting heads against the East because of that. And in the meantime, here we go again. Another Liberal Party voted in again, except this time the new Liberal Party has gone way too far. They've turned into a fascist government. They really have. I pity the old school Liberals who think that they're still involved in their Liberal Party, the card holders. They've been duped, and it's going to cost them their country. It's sad. It's sad to say, but this is how people learn, and this could fundamentally go down as one of the greatest separations in world history, and we're going to get on to why a little bit further on into this video. Now I'm going to scroll ahead a little wee bit further.
Well, for one thing, I find it embarrassing from a democratic standpoint that an American president can dominate and almost dictate a Canadian election. The fact that there was a fair increase or holding the line on the voter turnout, what does that say about Canadian democracy? That only a threat and statements by an American president can get people to wave the flag and be patriotic? Like, what does that? Is there not enough in this country, regardless of who the American president is, to be proud of? Is not our economic strength through the resource sector something that should make you proud? Is not our history, although it gets trashed by the professors at a lot of the universities and teachers, haven't we got enough to be proud of, regardless of what the President of the United States does? And I find that embarrassing and worrisome, that's what it takes to get Canadians to feel patriotic, act patriotic, and wave the flag. I think.
See, and this is the far cry. This is the major difference between the East and the West. The East, because of the propaganda media, and again, like, share, and subscribe, and punch the notification bell. It helps grow the channel, but it also helps get information out there so that other people can actually be witness to truth and facts. Sorry, just the facts. The West is, without a doubt, the most proud areas of Canada. You will see way more flags, provincial and Canadian flags, through the prairies than you will out east. Now, on the East Coast, I've seen lots of Canadian flags, and they're actually right up there when it comes to the patriotism. But they give up their rights so easily. They have more and more of the socialist mentality has been taking over, and now you can see through the election how he stated that is so true. All of a sudden, it takes threats from a president in order for them to put their elbows up so they can bury their heads in their self-pride. They've allowed the propaganda to completely try to destroy and divide the nation for generations. They haven't lived through it because they have the voting demographics that control the nation. They haven't seen what the West has seen. They haven't felt what the West has felt. Not only for myself and my father and my grandfather, because this is a generational thing. He nails this whole principle of what is patriotism. All these people jumped on board and changed their idea of, they forgot about the 10 years of complete ignorance, ineptitude, and blatant fascism, like taking away status from people who are pro-life, trying to take away non-charitable status and tax churches and organizations. This isn't just a Catholic thing. This is a Muslim thing. A lot of religions fall into that. This is the fascist idea, the non-patriotic party of the Liberals, that they just jumped right back on board with because for some reason Carney was going to be their savior. That's what separates the East and the West more than anything. The West is always proud. They're like I said, out West, everybody waves at everybody. There's a sense of respect for everybody. Whereas out East, it's not there anymore. It's gone. decades ago, I would see a little wee bit of it when I was working and through the areas. I would still see a lot of it out east, like on the east coast. You know, you would go driving down the road, heading from one project in New Brunswick down to wherever, and people would wave to you. But that's dying off. The last few years that I've been going back and forth, it's dying off. Whereas out west, even though it's starting to slow, the smaller communities, rural areas still have that sense of pride, that sense of love for each other and respect for each other. That's the biggest separating factor. And it was proven in this election, which is why so many people are just done. They're fed up because they're seeing how brainwashed the East is. And it didn't take the propaganda media to do it. It was the reality that 10 years of complete destruction was forgotten. All of a sudden now pipelines are good. Now pipelines are... Where have you been for 30 years? Where have you been? And then now take a look. What's Carney and them doing? They're right back to where they were when Trudeau was in power. It's the exact same party. They didn't learn. And I can tell by a lot of the comments and stuff that I get from some of these liberals. They're just like, get out of the country, rah, rah, rah. They have no idea. They have no idea. No self-dignity, let alone self-pride. It's an embarrassment. Absolute embarrassment. Now, we're going to move on. This is psycho Jann Arden. Get a load of this. I mean, she is so toxic. She is so toxic. Unbelievably embarrassing. Un-Canadian. Absolutely un-Canadian. Wow.
Hey, a bunch of fucking separatists.
Oh, by the way, if you have kids, you might want to back them out. Yeah, Jann Arden. Yeah, potty mouth. I'm talking. She is a nasty, toxic, hateful, spiteful, zero morals, zero, like just listen to her.
Wackos. How you doing? Feeling good about yourselves?
Yeah, I feel great. How do you feel, Jann? Tell us about it.
You're an embarrassment to this country. Everything you have, everything that you have enjoyed, cherished, and benefited from comes from being part of one of the greatest countries on the planet. You guys have your heads so far up your asses that you obviously can't see what pricks you are. The way you are treating Indigenous people.
Oh, how are you treating me right now, Jann?
The way you are treating your fellow citizens, your fellow Canadians. You guys are a bunch of creepy little pricks. Alberta will never separate from Canada.
Oh,
it's
really?
never going to happen because people like me are going to stand up, throw their shoulders back, and keep fucking yelling. And keep standing up for what I know is right. And what you guys are doing is...
Right. So, thanks for your help, Jann. As a Westerner, I just want to say to you, the Easterner, who has her head so far up the liberal fascist government's butt, thank you. Thank you for this promotional video you just gave out west, proving once again why we have to get out of Canada. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. We're passing some of the most democratic laws, trying to salvage what's left of the democracy. We have been, even though the government out east has tried everything to shut us down and force us to be part of this social program, a welfare state, which we refuse to do. We're too hardworking. We got too much dignity. We got too much morale. We're just too damn proud. So thank you. Thank you for reminding all of us out here why we really need to get out. Unbelievable. I apologize for the toxicity of that woman. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I'm going to actually make a nice short and make sure that gets out there so that every single person out west can see how much the East loves and respects all of that tax money they've been taking from us. Yeah. And, for our provinces, funding all of the programs that are falling apart because of the way these guys vote. Yeah. And I'm just going to dabble a little wee bit on that. Just a little bit here. I've got a great little video here. This is, the medical system. You got people dying in the waiting rooms. People who could have been in and had mammograms or other tests done to see if they have cancer, MRIs, other things, who by the time they get in, the cancer's so spread through their body, it's either too late or now they have extreme chemo. Yeah, I've witnessed this. I have friends that this has happened to. Yeah, this is not the Canada that the West wants. They want change. So what are they doing? They're looking into the most fabulous, world-class countries with the best healthcare programs, and they're adopting that. And oh my God, out east, you'd never believe this. We're actually listening to doctors. We're listening to professionals on what needs to be done in order to fix the system. But out west, we're getting bucked. We're being forced into this socialist program that's so good. It's such a good system that they had to create this. Assisted dying now accounts for 1 in 20 Canadian deaths.
If there was more religion, I don't think this would be happening, because life is a gift and we shouldn't be promoting death.
What do you think about...
Don't worry about religion. The Trudeaus are trying to end that too. Oh, remember, I just finished telling you about it, and I talk about this in previous episodes. The Vatican has even reached out trying to talk to the Liberal Party, the new Liberal Party, about what they're trying to do, what the effects are, not only to the churches, all different types of churches, all religions, but also how it bears on our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Crickets in the media. Crickets from the government as they keep trying to push these bills. After all, this is how fascists are. You will believe what we believe, or we'll take your rights away and force you to. Yeah.
The idea of the government assisting people in taking their own life.
The government's more controlled, I think, would be. It's more of a way that for them to do it.
You trust the government?
Well, not 100%. No, not at all.
Do you think that the proliferation of this incentivizes governments to help people take their own life instead of treating them for their entire life?
Yeah, that's really weird. I want to say it's almost dystopian.
Oh yeah.
It is. And there was even a report put out, again, previous episodes, where they were warning Canada's going down the wrong path. And it's funny, it was after 10 years of the Liberal government that sped up what should have been happening in 100 years to coming true to fruition within the next 10 to 15 years. Dystopian, yes, because you keep voting fascists in. You have been completely brainwashed. And yes, instead of having the system pay for their mistakes, forcing Canadians to have the worst medical system pretty much globally out of all the civilized nations, let's just allow them to off themselves. I mean, we got them so broke they can't afford to go to another country and get the work done that they could do. I could drive just south and boom, I could have that operation. Problem is, government won't pay for it. I have to go through a whole series of rigmarole and different bits of paperwork, and then they don't pay for rooms and they don't pay for transport. And there's a whole list of things they don't pay for. This is Jann Arden's Canada. She just loves so much.
Yeah, that's up. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's a lot cheaper to end someone's life than to treat them for 40 years.
I really hope not that becomes the case, because that's wrong.
Yes, it is. Welcome to Canada. Now, let's get back to a little bit of reality. We'll start off with, where was I here? Ah, yes. We'll take off right here.
And what is your personal position on Alberta separating from
My personal position is I believe in Alberta sovereignty within a united Canada.
She said she was going to give Ottawa 6 months. She says that she owes it to Albertans to give it 6 months, and then after that she's going to decide. If she doesn't come over to our side, well, there's going to be a problem.
Well, and what do you mean by that?
Well, there's going to be a problem. She got 65% of her base and want her to pursue independence.
Canada is stronger when we work together. As an Albertan, I firmly believe that. You can always ask a question, but I know what I would respond clearly.
International law recognizes the express will of a people in just such a referendum, and it's cemented into law when other countries acknowledge that country's decision to become a sovereign nation. When Mr. Rath and I attended in Washington at the State Department, started off with the State Department saying we are very much in support of Alberta sovereignty.
What will happen is once we're recognized as an independent nation and other nations will do the same thing, then negotiations will take place and Ottawa will go ahead and negotiate with Alberta.
The only question is whether Alberta will be negotiating with Canada, as a province of Canada within the Clarity framework, or whether we're going to be negotiating with Canada as an independent nation state. So I guess those are the two open questions that that are on the table right now.
The negotiations that will take place with the federal government and the other provinces are the negotiations as to what Alberta sovereignty is going to look like. And the interim constitution that we've drafted as a template will address all of those things during the negotiations.
And the messaging that we foresee coming out of the United States at the appropriate time, within the framework of this present U.S. administration are three things. One, a statement that the United States is supportive of Alberta self-determination. Two, that the United States will recognize an independent nation of Alberta upon the results of a successful referendum. And then three, upon Alberta declaring its independence from Canada, that the United States will immediately enter into a free market, free trade agreement with the independent Commonwealth of Alberta, which would see zero tariffs on both sides of the Alberta-U.S. border and complete free trade with regard to all goods and services as between Alberta and the United States. We'll be able to double Alberta oil and gas production within the next 3 to 5 years. Because there's no doubt that with the agreements that are going to be structured with the new U.S. administration, we'll have 5 new pipelines down through Montana and 1 to the coast through Idaho and Washington State if we want one. And on top of it, if we can tariff BC rail goods coming through Alberta to Ontario, I think negotiating a couple other pipelines through BC are going to be pretty easy too, as the nation state of Alberta, as opposed to the province of Alberta going on bended knee to federal bureaucrats within the central regulatory agencies of Canada.
Now, I actually pointed this out on previous episodes because they keep saying landlocked. No, not really. And considering that northern BC has been having nothing but issues, especially the indigenous nations up there, trying to get the federal government to get out of the way so that they can get resource to market, they're done. And now BC's trying, but they're kissing butt because they're realizing it's too late. They need to really get their crap together. But I'm hoping that northern BC realizes what the problem is, and that obviously Alberta and Saskatchewan do have the power to tariff the rail as a negotiating tool, and the highways. They could just create tolls for anybody who's out of province. You got to pay a toll to go through, or go down south through the States, or try and find a route up north. There's a lot more power in Saskatchewan and Alberta than the media is trying to let on. Huge power. And economically, like I said, once the federal government's out of the way, you're looking at tripling the economies within a few years. And no more taxes going to the federal government. You get to spend that money like you want to. Better health care, better schools, better pensions. Everything becomes better. You're not paying the have-nots anymore. No more waste.
We just put out some polling that suggested 52% of Albertans would definitely vote to stay in Canada. How would you target them to get them to vote yes?
Well, I think once they understand the economics of it, I think it's going to be a pretty clear question. I think the whole problem with Alberta has been attacked and abused by Ottawa for so long that people here don't actually understand how much more it's costing them to live here than it would say they were somewhere else.
Alberta will become a nation state with the largest GDP per capita of any country in the world. There is nothing that Mark Carney can offer Danielle Smith that will be equal to what Albertans will give themselves when they vote yes to this question within the next 12 months.
Bill 54, this is what we think of you. You're garbage like that. This is treaty land.
And any talk of separation is really insanity.
There will be a robust revenue sharing agreement with Alberta First Nations that would see their revenues triple, if not greater, with regard to the wealth that will stay in Alberta instead of being looted out of the pockets of Alberta taxpayers by ungrateful politicians in Quebec who won't even let us have a pipeline through their province.
Once Alberta becomes an independent nation, then they'll be able to negotiate and be part of the wealth of Alberta. They will be able to take part in the revenues and the royalties. So their First Nations people will be far ahead of having to try and negotiate with Ottawa because Ottawa hasn't done anything for them.
Here's a situation where I really feel strongly that we have an opportunity to help millions of people. And saving Alberta, I very much believe, may help save the rest of Canada.
Let us know in the comments, would you vote yes?
Now, he is absolutely correct. And this is what, this is because of the control that the propaganda arm has, is why a lot of these Indigenous nations don't understand this. Look at all of the areas that are stuck to propaganda and trace their voting. Again, this has to do with the poll I'm working on, that it's going to take me a lot longer than I thought it was going to in order to get the numbers accurate for each province. But wherever propaganda is, there's ignorance. And it's, like I said, I don't blame the people for it. They don't have the ability nor the time to find real news. Again, like, share, and subscribe. If they were to actually see this and understand this, they sure in heck wouldn't be throwing democracy paperwork up into the air. They would be realizing, wait a minute, that's closer to my roots, to my beliefs, to my heritage than the federal government has ever given us. And we're going to have a seat, like a real seat at the table? Holy, that's something none of the generations alive today have ever seen. Not like their great ancestors had. It's just reality. Now, moving ahead a little wee bit further, Ezra and Fildebrandt. This is a great little talk that they had.
You know, I engaged in some self-harm on the way over. I read a column in the Globe and Mail by Andrew Coyne, basically saying, hey, Albertans, you have no right to complain. We shouldn't indulge you. You know, I could sum it up with, shut up, comma, he explained. And I knew this would happen. When Quebec says we're hard done by, our rights aren't being respected, we're not the masters of our own house, the rest of the country, or at least as represented in Ottawa, bends over backwards. Hey, you want 3 seats out of 9 on the Supreme Court, even though that's disproportionate? You got it. You want bilingualism across the whole country? You got it.
Even though they don't have it at home?
Yeah, and I mean, forget about it, talking about just plain old cash. I think we're about to see the most astonishing demonization of Alberta ever, of any province ever. And I even saw it with Mark Carney in one of his campaign stops. He sort of ridiculed Danielle Smith, the premier, in a way he would never do with any other premier of any stripe. I think there's a casual, easy default hate the West. It's the dog you can kick. It's the group you can mock in Canada and not worry about it. I feel like a storm is coming.
Yeah, I mean, going to the Globe column you're talking about from Coyne, it's East-splaining. You know, it's They're explaining to the West how the West should feel. Although the main audience is actually the East, most global readers are going to be in the East, explaining. It's meant to be telling the West how it is, but it's really meant to be consumed by Easterners, and it's obviously patronizing. What was astonishing to me there was also saying, first, you have no really big, maybe you got some little gripes, and we could talk about that. I'm sure one election could fix it all. Yeah. And but more astonishing was you don't actually have a right to leave. In fact, why does anyone have a right to break up a country? To which I thought, well, people in Yugoslavia, the Soviet Union, the British Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Habsburg Empire, might beg to differ. We have a pretty universally recognized, at least on paper, right in the world to self-determination of a geographically concentrated people. That's how we get nation states out of the old empires and things like that. And many Albertans are now want to exercise that right, just as I do believe Quebecers have that right. I guess the question is, and maybe fairly in both cases, is this a negotiating tactic or is this for real? And many in Quebec genuinely are on the independent side. Others use it as so-called profitable.
Like a good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, use it as leverage. Some in Alberta want to use it as leverage. I think that's a failing strategy. If we're going to play the independence game, we play it to win because we want to be an independent country.
Very well said, Hildebrand. Very, very well said. Now, the funniest part about all of this is how the Liberal Party is taking Canada backwards. Now, for all the Indigenous out there, all the greatest harms that came through the Crown, came through Britain. What is this government doing? They're rejoining England. They're bringing the King in. It's been, 50-some years since he's been brought into our parliamentary system, and now he's being brought back in order to talk to the House. At what point do you draw the line? At what point do you remember the stories from your parents and grandparents and ancestors? This is just driving a greater wedge between the East and the West. Add that to the false promises that's been happening through the federal government. Instead, they just keep giving small amounts of money in order to never give the rights back that you so deserve. And it's so bad that even the propaganda arm is trying ways in order to hide the money being fed to them by the federal government for being propaganda. We'll just tie into this as the last part of the show, the reality, why I need you to like, share, and subscribe. Not just me, but other independent media like Juno, like Rebel. There's a lot of fabulous outlets out there that are telling truth, putting truth to power. This is like I said, you can't make this stuff up. Now, this clip above the article is a little bit older, but let's just take a refresher.
Well, it's no secret news organizations are struggling financially, and the optics of paying bonuses, especially to executives, is under intense scrutiny. The Canadian Press reports the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation paid over $18 million in bonuses this year, at the same time as it eliminated hundreds of jobs. CP obtained documents through access to information that show more than $3.3 million of that was paid to 45 CBC executives. CBC CEO Catherine Tate says the payouts are tied to performance and are part of compensation agreements in some employee contracts.
Now, the real kicker is this has been going on for a long time. And it's only because of social media and independent media that the reality of how much tax dollars are being sucked out of the Canadian public for a company that can't make it on its own. Nobody likes it. Nobody believes it. There's a few that do, and there's a few that are married to it because they have no choice. But as technology goes further and further, especially with the introduction of Starlink, this is changing. Let's just take a read. So the CBC's board of directors says the Crown Corporation will no longer pay individual bonuses to employees. The board says in a statement it will discontinue what CBC refers to as performance pay and adjust salaries of affected staff to compensate them. The move comes after the public broadcaster was criticized for paying out millions in bonuses after eliminating hundreds of jobs. The statement follows the release of an independent review by Mercer Canada of the broadcaster's compensation for non-unionized employees, including senior executives. That review says while CBC is generally aligned with other companies and private sector organizations, the bonuses have faced scrutiny. Really? It says if CBC decides to get rid of its performance-based incentive program, the broadcaster should take steps to ensure compensation stays in the midpoint of the market. Really? Really? So they're not going to cut any money back, and we know Carney's already saying they're going to put it into law so that this propaganda arm stays forever in Canada, all but another reason for the West to flee, to run. And again, petitions should almost be created in Saskatchewan and Alberta, and theoretically in all provinces, to ban state-funded media. You can't have a democracy when your government controls the news or inspires the news in any way. You can't have that link. How do you hold a government to account when they're protected by an outlet? Or in Canada's case, every legacy outlet. This has to end. This has got to end. This is why I keep saying over and over and over again, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And if you are, punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. I hope you enjoyed today's. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm Alias Tagai. Stay informed.